Hi, Year 10. I hope you're all keeping well and you're all doing okay at home. So it's a little bit more Jekyll and Hyde for us today. And we're going to have a look at Extract 8 in your booklets, which comes from Chapter 3 of the novel. As we have a little look at this extract today, we are going to focus on two main questions. So the questions you have that you're going to have an answer of afterwards are firstly, what is your first impression of Dr. Jekyll? And secondly, why do you think he wants Utterson to stop asking him about his will? Okay, so let's start by having a little read of the extract. You can either follow along on yours, you can just have a listen. If you've got a copy that's printed out, you could always have a highlight of anything that you find interesting on the way through as well. Here we go. "I've been wanting to speak to you, Jekyll," began the latter. "You know that will of yours." A close observer might have gathered that the topic was distasteful, but the doctor carried it off gaily. "My poor Utterson," said he, "you are unfortunate in such a client. I never saw a man so distressed as you were by my will, unless it were that hide-bound pedant Lanyon at what he called my scientific heresies. Oh, I know he's a good fellow, you needn't frown, an excellent fellow, and I always mean to see more of him, but a high-bound pedant for all that, an ignorant, blatant pedant. I was never more disappointed in any man than Lanyon." "You know I never approved of it," pursued Utterson, ruthlessly disregarding the fresh topic. "My will? Yes, certainly I know that," said the doctor a trifle sharply. "You have told me so." "Well, I tell you so again," continued the lawyer. "I have been learning something of young Hyde." The large, handsome face of Dr. Jekyll grew pale to the very lips, and there came a blackness about his eyes. "I do not care to hear more," said he. "This is a matter I thought we had agreed to drop." "What I heard was abominable," said Utterson. "It can make no change. You do not understand my position," returned the doctor, with a certain incoherency of manner. "I am painfully situated, Utterson. My position is a very strange one. It is one of those affairs that cannot be mended by talking." "Jekyll," said Utterson, "you know me. I am a man to be trusted. Make a clean breast of this in confidence, and I make no doubt I can get you out of it." "My good Utterson," said the doctor, "this is very good of you. This is downright good of you, and I cannot find words to thank you in. I believe you fully. I would trust you before any man alive, I before myself, if I could make the choice, but indeed it isn't what you fancy. It is not as bad as that, and just to put your good heart at rest, I will tell you one thing. The moment I choose, I can be rid of Mr. Hyde. I give you my hand upon that, and I thank you again and again. And I will just add one little word, Utterson, that I'm sure you'll take in good part. This is a private matter, and I beg of you to let it sleep." Okay, so the couple of questions on this extract that we're going to be coming back to, or you're going to have a little go at after we've had a look at it together, are these. So firstly, what is your first impression of Dr. Jekyll? And secondly, why do you think he wants Utterson to stop asking him about his will? So let's have a little look at it, at the extract, a little more closely together first of all. So it launches straight into Utterson wanting to speak to Jekyll and wanting to ask him about the will. And here from the narrator, a close observer might have gathered that the topic was distasteful, but the doctor carried it off gaily. So why was this so distasteful? I guess really it is a difficult topic. Wills are very private. They're often kept secret. They're considered taboo topics of conversation because someone's money and their inheritance is uncomfortable. It's an uncomfortable topic to bring up. And they're not even family members, they're friends. Utterson obviously is a lawyer. He does mean well. And being a lawyer, he's a respectable and wealthy man in Victorian London. And Stevenson presents him, or his personality, as being really rational and being really calm. But it still is an uncomfortable subject that he's bringing up. And we see in turn that Jekyll tries to keep the conversation pretty cheery. So it says there, the doctor, so that's Jekyll, carried it off gaily. Gaily at the time meaning bright and light-hearted. So he tries, first of all, to keep it all quite bright and all quite kind of cheery between the two friends. But he also does try to change topic, Jekyll here. So the topic of his will comes up. This is obviously something that they've talked about before together. He knows it's going to be difficult. He knows his friend's going to ask him tricky questions. And so instead, he starts talking about Dr. Lanyon. So we get these parts here just pulled out. So Jekyll starts talking about Dr. Lanyon, who is another medical doctor. And we know that Lanyon and Jekyll represent two very different sides of 19th century medicine. So Lanyon is a very successful, traditional, rational practitioner of the time. Everything he sort of uses and knows is quite traditional medicine. It's very it's all based on kind of methodology and on kind of tried and tested practices. So he's a very traditional doctor, whereas Jekyll believes in the supernatural. He's a bit more of a tester of things. He has theories of his own. He believes in the supernatural. He believes in mysticism. And we see a little bit of Jekyll's annoyance towards Lanyon here. So he repeatedly calls him a pedant, first of all. So we've got it 3 or 4 times just in that one paragraph there. And a pedant at the time, and it is a word that is still around today, just less so, means someone who is sort of excessively concerned with really tiny or really minute, very specific details about something. So the fact that Jekyll describes him as a hidebound pedant also shows that Lanyon, or he feels Lanyon has very fixed opinions and that he likes to let everyone else know how smart he believes he is. So we know that the two have obviously had quite heated conversations about medicine and about science. We get there, unless it were hidebound pedant Lanyon, at what he called my scientific heresies. So perhaps Jekyll's been cross in the past that Lanyon's just dismissed what he believes is a really strong area of science. They've obviously fallen out previously. However, he knows that Utterson does like him. So he's like, well, you needn't frown. He's an excellent fellow. But he keeps repeating the fact that he's been irritated by him, that he finds him too particular. He's someone who's, today we would use the word pedantic for him more. He's trying to change the topic, but Utterson is determined to get him back on track and to get their conversation back to them talking about Jekyll's will. So Utterson continues, ruthlessly disregarding the fresh topic by saying, so I never approved of it. To which Jekyll replies, my will? Yes, certainly I know that. And we see that it's beginning to get to Jekyll. So it's described as him saying it a trifle sharply. So we've got an adverb there with sharply that's suggesting that there's a kind of slightly aggressive tone creeping in from Jekyll. He is fed up of being asked about it. A kind of thought from him that it really is none of Utterson's business to be keeping asking him about his own will. But Utterson continues. He wants Jekyll to know that he's found something out about Hyde. So as he says at the bottom of that page there, will I tell you so again, continued the lawyer. I have been learning something of young Hyde. And Jekyll's reaction to this is interesting. We see a contrast as a juxtaposition of his large, handsome face growing pale to the very lips. And that there also came a blackness about his eyes. This is interesting, isn't it? Because the fact that he's usually quite handsome, so he's a good-looking chap, but he grows pale to the very lips, suggests that the kind of colour leaves him, almost like he becomes quite unwell suddenly, but it perhaps shows his shock and perhaps his panic at the fact that Utterson has found something out. And that's combined with this blackness that appears about his eyes. And that again is interesting. He's usually handsome, but the blackness perhaps does suggest a sort of inner darkness, or something quite hidden about his character that's lurking just underneath the surface there. So it's an interesting initial reaction that Jekyll has. But he also shows his complete determination here not to change his will. So their conversation, Utterson drops in this knowledge that he now knows something about Hyde. Jekyll's face instantly gives away the fact that he's not comfortable with this. And we know that this has come up before. He says, "I do not care to hear more. This is a matter I thought we had agreed to drop." To which Utterson says, "What I heard was abominable." So Utterson is disgusted, horrified, but Jekyll is determined still just to hold sort of to his position, to not alter. So we get a bit of ambiguity really, because he says, "It can make no change. You do not understand my position. I am painfully situated." But he doesn't explain why. So we get a real sense of ambiguity surrounding his relationship with Hyde here, whether he's tied to Hyde in some way. Hyde has some kind of power or control over him. So for us and Utterson sharing the sort of knowledge at this point, we just don't quite know what's going on. And that's sort of backed up further by the fact that he's saying it with a certain incoherency, which suggests that he simply isn't making sense. Utterson just can't make sense of it. He's not speaking in sentences that sort of give any knowledge or understanding or explanation of what's going on. There's just no answers given. So it seems really incoherent, slightly kind of panicked almost at this point. And so Utterson, in reaction, sort of reaches out to Jekyll. He wants to help him. So he says, "I am a man to be trusted. Make a clean breast of this in confidence." He's saying, "Explain to me what's going on and I can get you out of it. I can help you out of this." But Jekyll refuses Utterson's offers of help. And instead of accepting help, he offers to reassure his friend. So we get there phrases such as, "It's not as bad as that," or "just to put your good heart at rest." And he also follows that with his statement, "The moment I choose, I can be rid of Mr. Hyde," which is really interesting. And if you don't know what goes on to sort of happen in the story, it throws again this kind of implication of who has the power in whatever this relationship is between Jekyll and Hyde. The moment I choose, I can be rid of him, suggests that he has power over him. Yet earlier on, we had the fact that he can't alter his will and he seems tied to him in some way. So the ambiguity, the sort of unknown, the unanswered questions that come up here for Utterson and for us as a reader are really highlighted. The ending of this is also interesting. So Jekyll, it's all been quite cheery, hasn't it? Jekyll's tried in that bit to say, "Thank you, thank you, thank you." We got lots of thanks from Jekyll towards Utterson's offers of help. But he ends almost on a little bit of a warning. So he says, "Just add one little word, Utterson. This is a private matter, and I beg of you to let it sleep." So for all of Jekyll's politeness, his gratefulness, his thanking of Utterson previously, this final little statement again shows a bit of an edge, a bit of a sort of unknown side or an unknown quality to Jekyll. He calls it a private matter, which implies quite forcefully here to Utterson that this is no one else's business. And he also uses the metaphor right at the end of the extract, let it sleep, to sort of state to Utterson that he is to investigate this no further. And so it leaves both us and Utterson at the end of this wondering really just what is going on, but also just what might happen if Utterson ignores Jekyll's advice there. So what would happen if he continued to investigate it? So there we go. That's just a little snippet into extract 8, which is out of chapter 3. You might have spotted some other bits on the way through, which would also be brilliant to sort of pull out and have a little look at. But that's the main bits there just to get you started. So you've now got the 2 questions to have a little think about in your booklet and to have a go at. Hopefully this has been helpful in just giving you a few ideas to get going. Keep well, stay safe. Hopefully we will get to see you all really soon. Take care. Bye.